Good evening. Hello. We are back for part two of discussing the book Made Whole that was written by me maybe 2 years ago. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for tuning in. We are discussing the book Made Whole. Tonight is going to be chapter one, discussing generational pain, childhood trauma. Growing Pains is the name of the chapter, but it's focusing on parenting styles, it's focusing on generational things that we deal with growing up. So, those are tonight's topics, but I'm going to do a recap from yesterday. Our first video, it was the introduction and the prologue of the book. Again, if you do not have this book, it would be nice for you to get it. It is on my website, it's on Amazon. You can do the physical copy. There is an ebook version, and it's also available on audio on all major platforms. So if you read it, the book, you'll know how to follow along. You can join in on the conversation. If you have not read it, then it's okay. You can still get in on the conversation as well. But just to recap from yesterday, it was me giving my backstory on me being a therapist. I've practiced physical therapy for about, I think this year will make 14 years for me. And just the process of transitioning patients from when they come in and they're injured, they're hurt, and the joy that it is when I see them leave from the services that I've been giving them, and taking that same initiative, taking that same energy and applying it to like soul health. It not just being like a physical thing, but really having an interest in people internally. Um, Working with individuals in the field and just talking, and myself included, we take pride in taking care of our outer selves, and it gets to the point where sometimes we neglect our inner being. We carry so many emotional wounds, but we don't take the time to care for those wounds. And this is what this whole process has been about, me sitting down, focusing on my issues, my wounds, my hurts, and working through those things. Just so you don't look good on the outside and you don't have anything to show for it on the inside, because inside is just important. So we talked about going through the process. I discussed in the book, and I related to the therapy aspect. For those that are in healthcare, you can kind of identify with what I'm going to say, but I break it down in the book. But I list its examination, evaluation, diagnosis, prognosis, and intervention. And the idea is you can't fix what you don't know. So you sit down and you figure out, like, how did this happen? You go through the whole history. When those doctors ask about history, it's for a reason. Our history plays a major part in how we live today. So those are the steps that we go through, that we process, sit down internally with each one. And then, of course, in the end is the intervention, and that's working through it. Um, Not an easy task, but it is necessary. It's doable, and if you have the right circle around you, you can accomplish so much. Which is why I emphasize therapy, coaching, counseling, community, getting yourself in circles. It is all so important. With that, you have to turn everything over to God. It's like taking your hands off, acknowledging I'm jacked up. Some things ain't all the way right. I got a few things right, but not all things. And letting Him show you, letting Him identify and point out those things that you can start working on to fix yourself. Now, typically, something usually happens that gets you to a point of that whole thought process, right? I mentioned for me, it was the death of my bestest friend, and how I felt like with him being a young father, husband, we're the same age, and his life was taken from him. Was he able to accomplish all of the things that he was set out to do? So that's when my wheels started turning for myself. If something ever happens to me, did I live out everything that I was supposed to do? So usually something happens that triggers our thought processes, triggers our emotions to make us think like, whoa, God, am I doing all that I'm supposed to? Am I living in my full potential? Am I missing something? Those things could be a loss of a family member, friend, a loved one. It could be those milestone events. For me, I'm approaching 40, and it's like, whoa, we reaching a certain point here, and it's like, am I really good at this age? It could be milestone events. It could be um, holidays sometimes trigger things, anniversaries triggers. It could be relocating, you move into a whole new city, and it's like, this is all unfamiliar to me. Am I equipped enough for this? It could be the loss of a job where it's like, I now have to utilize, strength and gifts and talents. What am I really good at? Like, you really start evaluating everything. It could also be a breakup. We know sometimes the departure of someone that we have been with can usually trigger certain emotions that makes us think of whatever. So in that time frame, whatever it may be, whenever you may experience it, be completely open, turn everything over to God, let him do the work, and let him identify the root of the issues that you are facing. We also talked about roots and open doors. Usually something happens which causes the domino effect of everything else to occur. I mentioned about seeing yourself as this beautiful temple, which we are. We are a house. We house the Spirit of God. And something traumatic happening, whatever that may be, and that event has caused the enemy to come in to steal from us, to kill, to make us feel worthless, to not make us feel our passion anymore. Whatever that thing may be, that open door then allows the enemies to play a major part in how we act and what we do and how we think. So we're just not out here thinking and being and doing for no reason. There's something underlying that took place. So always addressing the root. Um, let's see what else we talked about. I think that was pretty much the recap. So tonight it's going to be brief, just like the first video. We are discussing chapter one, growing pains, and growing pains is really about parenting styles. It is about our childhood years and how our childhood years are the most formative years ever. Everything that we do now is pretty much based on the teachings, what we mimic, what we saw when we were growing up. And our parents, I'm not here to indict anyone, our parents, my parents, did the best that they could, right, with the information that they were given. But what they were given may not have been 100% correct. Like, our grandparents taught them some things that may seem normal, but it's like, no, this is kind of toxic. Do we not think this is toxic behavior? Why do we consider these behaviors normal? But that's because it's been learned behavior over time. Someone taught them that maybe it ain't right, but this is how we do it. Y'all ever heard that? Like, oh, we so and so, we don't do things like that. Or we so and so, we fighters. We live up to our name. And it's like, how ideal is it to actually live up to your name? Growing pains. Everything that we may deem as normal could very well not be. Sweeping issues up under the rug and not addressing issues could be a form of toxic behavior. All that yelling back and forth, not being able to communicate properly, let's talk about it. That's toxic behavior. Um, but for some people, it's like, oh, that's just what we do. That's just how we are. We always we always getting it. We go back and forth, but we come back together and act like nothing ever happened. We just pick up like nothing took place and nobody's addressing anything. Toxic behavior. I like to give this example, and this is Jesus. Now, Jesus himself had the prime, I think, I ain't talking about his parents, but I think he had the prime example of um, some, maybe some traumatic experiences with his parents. Here it is, Jesus and his parents. They are they are away. They are at the temple, and his parents leave. Mary and Joseph leaves, and they are gone for days before they even recognize that Jesus is not with them. Like, what kind of parents are so busy or so caught up on themselves? Like, Mary, you seen Joseph? Oh, I thought he was with you. No, Joseph, I thought he was with you. But where's the boy? Did we ever bring him back? Was he in the car when we came? Jesus is left behind at the temple. Talk about some traumatic experiences. So when we can say that Jesus has experienced everything that we possibly have, and he's the example that we can go to, I am for sure believing that that is ultimately true. Okay, so even Jesus himself, okay, has some dysfunction going on. But I'm going to read just a little piece, not a lot, but this here says generational cycles are formed based on our parents' or caregivers' brokenness or trauma that was passed on to them from their parents and the generation before. You are able to identify actual trauma related activity, such as not talking about issues or yelling or showing aggression, as appropriate communication, pretending that everything is fine when problems exist, physical altercations, shutting down, or manipulating others so that you get your way. Or how about this? Apologizing with no change in behavior. These things are looked at as either normal or swept under the rug to not deal with. And then I go on to list in further research, knowing that there are 5 different parenting types. I'm not going to get into what the parenting types are, but they are listed and detailed in the book. But we take on a lot from our parents. And it's not to say, our parents did not raise us complete, they didn't do right or they failed us. Some people may have that testimony. Some people have absent parents. Some people have had abusive parents. I'm not taking that away from you if that is your experience. I hate that you had to go through that, but there is something in the end for you to gain. But, all parenting ain't bad. But the way that they raised us does play a part in how we live our lives today. Um, then you have where, based on each parenting type or the things that you've experienced from your parents, you now have wounds. There is a thing called mother wounds and father wounds. You can look in the book as well, or just research um, issues that you've experienced with your mother. That causes certain wounds that could be different than someone who's had issues that they've experienced with their father. That could look like lack of boundaries. That could look like people pleasing. That could look like perfectionism. That could look like like a fear of failure, or any of those things. And that's because a parent, or the lack of, played a part in our growing up and how we perceived ourselves, how we perceive our environments, how we perceive each other. Um, so the way that we grow up, kind of dictates the moves that we make in our adult years. I speak on the fact of how, um, my parents were not together growing up. So I had, my mom's house that I, was the primary resident at. And then I had my father's house that I was at on the weekends. And just not having, like, my father, I saw him on the weekends, holidays. So there was not like he was an absent father. He was present. He just was not present on a consistent basis, like in the household with me. And it was always a feeling of, like, a sense of rejection when I would go back home from leaving my father's house. Um, having that happen as an early child can play a part in the adulthood of looking for the attention that I did not get from my father. Now I am seeking that in other ways that aren't necessarily healthy. So I hope that makes sense on how some incidents going through things when you are a child, if not dealt with, can definitely play a part in the adulthood, which therefore is the hints of growing pains, because it causes pain. Not all, but some. You could have someone that was abused or molested or any of those things. And then as they grow older, they pick up the spirit of promiscuity. Someone out here that just fast, you grew up and like, oh, that girl fast, or that girl, she out here in the streets, or the around the way girl, or whatever phrase we like to use for children. And it's mostly females that have a tendency to attach themselves in relationships or lay up or do whatever. It's usually an underlying reason behind that. It's usually something that has taken place in them or to them that causes the behavior. No one just grows up to be promiscuous, like something took place. So, yes, that's all listed here. The different parenting types are listed, the different wounds that you receive from mothers and your father wounds are there. But the ultimate thing that I really wanted to stress in the first chapter of the book is that you are not responsible for what your childhood looked like. That has nothing to do with you. That is a healing point that I want you to remember. If something took place to you, against you, mom wasn't there, dad wasn't there, whoever left you, you are not responsible for what happened in your childhood. Based on that knowledge, I want you to receive grace. I want you to give yourself grace. I want you to focus on healing from that. I would like for you to focus on forgiving the parent or parents or whoever. It doesn't necessarily have to be a parent, it could be whoever was your primary caretaker in your younger years that you feel like failed you somehow. It could be aunt, uncle, cousins, siblings, whatever that is, whatever has made you feel guarded growing up, whatever has made you feel isolated growing up, whoever has made you feel rejected, whatever, whoever those people are, I want you to forgive them for it. And I want you to forgive yourself for anything that you may have done in the process because of past. You are not responsible for what happened in your childhood. Show yourself grace. To end the chapter, Growing Pains, chapter 1, focus on God being the perfect parent. I said in the beginning how Jesus himself, Jesus, the Savior of the world, went through a whole traumatic experience by being left in the temple. His parents packed up, got in the car, and drove, and ain't even realized that he was not in the car with them till later on. Like, your parents forgot you, they fumbled you, and it's okay. But God is our perfect Father. Jesus is here, the Holy Spirit is here to comfort us during those times. I want you to receive his love. I want you to receive his grace. I want you to receive his adoption of being his son or his daughter. Receive the acceptance that he has, the open invitation that is being given, because he is not going to fumble us like our parents. I know for me, I am still learning how to be God's daughter. Um, I see it's so I ain't gonna say it's hard. I shouldn't say that because the words have power. Um, but it's been in a difficult state of not trying to treat God like how I would do my earthly father. Like me and my earthly father, we good, we hang out, we talk, but we don't have a consistent relationship. And I sometimes feel like I do God the same way. Like we good, we talk, I check in, but to really have that father-daughter bond, because I lack it personally, earthly, it's like it's extra hard work to focus on that in the spiritual realm. But again, the same grace I'm asking you to have, I ask myself, I give it to me. And the journey is it's not as easy as everyone wants to make it seem, but it is worth it. Take your time, let him love you, let him pour into you, let him show you those incidents, those root causes that took place. Let him identify those things to you so that you can work on those. Because whatever our parents did, they did the best that they could with what they had, even though it may not have always been the right thing. However, we as adults now can change those things. We as adults can be the generational curse breakers. We breaking cycles, we breaking curses, we breaking what our family deems as familiar, and we going forward into a new season, a new space, a new dimension. We're resetting our bloodlines. Um, so that's really what Growing Pains is about. The first chapter of the book, the generational trauma, curses, the things that we take on from our parents, the things that have been passed down to us, but doing the work to understand that God is not like our parents and that he actually wants to be there for us. He actually wants to value us and love on us and just give us his blessings and shower us with his bountiful everything. But we have to do our part as well. So tomorrow I will be back and we're going to discuss the second chapter, which is the spirit of religion. Our church, the church folks might be able to tie in on that spirit of religion. But thank you for tuning in to the second live. You can go back and watch the first one. It is still posted. Go back, rewatch this, and read the book. Read the book. Go get it. If you don't like reading or you busy, it is on audio. It is on audio. But learn about the different parenting styles, you can identify who your parents are in those. And if you are a parent, you may be able to identify yourself and being able to see what kind of parent you are and if you are setting your children up for success or greater success or not so success. Um, and then learn about the parent wounds and how to work through those. But thank you for tuning in, and I will see you all tomorrow night. Thanks. Bye.